Operation Hope. The work we are doing is not only changing lives, it is transforming communities. So let's start our journey toward healing a nation by having this first conversation. Joining us via remote with all this amazing technology, we have Bill Daley, who is the Vice Chairman of Public Affairs for Wells Fargo. Formerly, he served as the Chief of Staff for President Barack Obama and Secretary of Commerce for President Bill Clinton. Likewise, we are joined by my good friend, Chairman and CEO of the National Urban League, Marc Morial. Formerly, he served as Mayor of New Orleans and President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Welcome, gentlemen. We're delighted to have you. And joining me here in studio, our founder, Chairman, and CEO of Operation Hope, John Bryant. John, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. I want to thank Lisa Borders, who is just a bad sister, as we say where I grew up. Lisa's the former everything, former president of the Coca-Cola Foundation, former head of the WNBA, former president of the Atlanta City Council. Just it goes on, and goes on. And her best years are still ahead of her. She's only 13 now.
Oh, I'll take that all day, all day.
I want to welcome, and I want to thank Lisa for challenging me and the Operation Hope team to do this digitally about 6 months ago. And vision made real. Never say no. Never say you can't do anything, ever. The words can't and impossible don't live in our dictionary. You got to dream big dreams. A guy who's on now, a gentleman who's on now, dreams those big dreams and has lived them. Marc Morial, you might call him Mayor Morial, was mayor of New Orleans, or as they say, New Orleans, you might say that.
NOLA.
And his father also was an icon in Louisiana. And his whole family is a family of change makers. And he now runs arguably the most consequential organization for the 20th century and leaning into the 21st century, the National Urban League, which I think helped to lead what I call the Second Reconstruction. We had the first Reconstruction after the Civil War, which was a freedom. You had Frederick Douglass, all these heroes and sheroes, Madam C.J. Walker, et cetera. Working blacks and whites, Abraham Lincoln, others working together. Then you had the Second Reconstruction, which we call the Civil Rights Movement. Our mentor, Ambassador Young, who will be with us, helped to lead that with Dr. King. But the Urban League played a quiet and sometimes not so quiet transformational role in creating what we could really call today the American black middle class.
That's right.
And they don't get the credit that they deserve. And they're too modest to brag on themselves, so I'm going to brag on them for them. Marc, we're honored to have you with us today and want to acknowledge you first.
Thank you very much. You want to introduce Bill, or you want me to?
I do. I just wanted to make sure that people knew who
thank
you
you.
were.
Let me just say thank you for having me. Thank you for the generous remarks.
Yeah. And Bill Daley is a special human being. His family has literally transformed the middle of this country, Chicago, which is the country, and it defined the 20th century and arguably the 19th century. His family's legacy on public service is undisputed. Probably helped to create a president as well. And Bill has his own legacy, was a member of the president's cabinet, and traveled the world promoting free enterprise and fairness. Was chief of staff to arguably one of the most dignified, intelligent presidents in the history of this country, President Barack Obama, who I had also had the opportunity to serve as an advisor. And he is a doer behind the scenes, typically. He likes getting things done. He doesn't like messiness. And I commend him today because he stepped into mess today. And he's doing it with dignity and he's not flinching. So full disclosure, this forum has for years been sponsored in part by Wells Fargo. That does not mean they get to speak, but if I find somebody at the bank that I think can add value, I invite them. typically they decline. If I was Bill Daley, I would have declined this year.
But he's a fixer. He jumps in and fixes things.
They
so
had
how
a moment.
Yes.
At least they've had a moment of what I call unconscious bias a few weeks ago with their CEO, Charlie Scharf, and Bill Daley's the vice chairman. And I've talked to Charlie for an hour at their request. I've talked to Bill Daley for several hours, even on weekends a couple times, at his request. Mm-hmm. We didn't agree on everything. It was not a clean, efficient, elegant conversation where you had a beginning, middle, and end, because it's complicated. But Bill Daley is completely leaned in and shows up today because he's got nothing to hide, and he has every intention to turn this challenge into an opportunity. And for that, I really, really, really respect him. Bill, you're a great American, and I appreciate you. Thanks for being with us today. You're a good man. So I just gave that beautiful introduction to Bill Daley, and I'm told that he actually might not be with us on camera. We'll see if he joins us. Before we get finished. So, Marc, let's talk a little bit about this moment. Let's talk about the historic trajectory that the Urban League has experienced more than 100 years. And what does this moment mean for you? I see it as a moment in history, but history doesn't feel historic when you're sitting in it. I think it just feels like another day. What does it feel like to you?
Well, thank you, John, and I want to thank you for many years of friendship and for being an institution creator, because Operation Hope has become an institution of economic empowerment and financial education, as well as a bridge builder between the financial services industry and our communities across the nation. So thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your leadership and for the generous words. We're at a moment that has to become a movement. And a reflection is, if you began by talking about the Clinton years, and I served as mayor of New Orleans during the Clinton years and during a portion of the Bush years, and have served at the National Urban League during the Bush, Obama, and now Trump years.
Yeah.
And what's striking is how much economic ground we have lost since the year 2000 as a Black community and as a nation. People might say, how have we lost ground? We're now experiencing our second economic recession in now a 20-year time period, really in less than a 15-year time period. Black people have lost a tremendous amount of wealth. It began during the Great Recession, and it certainly did not fully or completely recover. And now we have this situation where many people are on the cliff of losing their homes through foreclosure because they've lost their jobs. We're on the cliff of people being evicted from their homes. And then we look back and we see a fundamental situation where people's earnings, their wages, what people make when they work, has not kept pace with inflation for probably 70 to 80% of Americans. And that's against a backdrop of a growing economy pre the recession. This is the beginning of the third Reconstruction. We have to ensure that it is the beginning of the third Reconstruction. And central to this time is, while George Floyd has animated the protest and been the tip of the spear in our concerns about justice, you and I, John, we have to make sure, and many on this, that the issue of economic empowerment is on the go-forward agenda.
Right. Helping
people build assets, helping to get investment, private and public investment, back in our communities. I was speaking to a group of leaders in Flint, Michigan over the weekend, and what's palpable for so many American cities has been the disinvestment.
Yep.
So we've got to reverse the disinvestment, both public and private, to rebuild these communities and put people back to work, building their communities, expanding the housing and improving the housing stock, improving infrastructure, growing small businesses into medium-sized businesses, and hopefully global concerns. The formula to bring about wealth in America is not a complicated formula. Race and exclusion has complicated it for people of color.
Yeah.
And if we could get some of the barriers out of the way and make sure that the people of goodwill are determined to not be deterred by these barriers, and if we can align some of the awakening we're seeing in corporate America into a consistent commitment, and if we can get an administration which wants to act in a forthright way to make sure that communities are invested in, we have opportunities and a chance to take this dark time, this difficult time, and make this a time when we begin to turn the corner.
Yeah. There's so much of, and Lisa, you lean in whenever you see fit. There's so much, Marc, of what you said that is, I mean, you could spend an hour on if you unpack it. Let me back up to a couple things that stuck out for me. You and I, you more than me, have advised several administrations, and I think you mentioned Bush, Clinton, and Obama. So the point here is Republican and Democrat.
Correct.
And as I look back 150 years ago, it was a Republican administration of Abraham Lincoln, probably meant something different in tone back then, that Frederick Douglass worked very closely with around the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank. That, of course, launched the first Reconstruction, which was thwarted. And you had, I think, the precursors to what we call the HBCUs today.
Correct.
And that sparked the first level of freedom. And you had, soon after that, the creation of the National Urban League, the NAACP, early 1900s, blacks and whites working together once again. And blacks really emerging as these intellectual powerhouses. And again, both parties finding a way to find some common ground. You don't always agree, but you try not to be disagreeable. And at every point you've been there. The Urban League has been there in these inflection points. The last time, Marc, you correct me if I'm wrong, it was civil rights, or the right to vote, which you're still pushing, and you guys became a beacon for job training, amongst other things. Am I getting that right, Marc? In the 20th century?
You are. Job training, economic empowerment, corporate diversity, home ownership, small business, all of the economic, if you will, initiatives.
Yeah.
We've been, at the front of.
What were some of those, and Lisa, feel free to jump in here whenever you see fit. But was there a couple points that you want to raise that people don't recognize about the major things that the Urban League leaned in and made happen?
One of the things, we're most associated with jobs. And what that means is in our network of 90 affiliates, every one of them is a place that people can go for help in finding a job. It's a place people can go with help in enhancing their skills. We've also become the largest provider of housing counseling or home buyer education, which is a form of financial literacy to Black Americans. We've got 125 counselors in approximately 50 affiliates around the nation. We're serving some 30,000 plus people a year when it comes to preparing them to become home buyers. And now, since I've joined, we've expanded our work by providing 14,000 businesses. About 90% of them are Black businesses, but we serve all businesses of economic and social disadvantage with coaching, counseling, training, other forms of services. So what I will say about those programs is they absolutely make a difference.
Yeah.
What I will also say about those programs is that their scale is simply not large enough to meet the need. That is one of the messages I bring to every single president. Don't look for a silver bullet. Look for things that work and scale them up significantly. housing counseling works.
Yep.
Apprenticeship programs work.
Yep.
Reentry
That was a Marshall
job
point.
training programs work. And what we are is we're an executor of policy. So in a new administration, we want a bigger commitment, a more significant commitment to do these kinds of things.
I didn't know that, Mark. The executors of policy.
Yeah, you got to have the right.
For the executors, I mean, policy is on the, is on the drawing board, and then you've got to execute it. You can draw up a job training program or job training law or job training. Somebody's got to make it work.
Yep.
You can say, let's go put another 1 million black people in homes. You got to execute it. And I think that community-based groups, yours, mine, and others, and we're a community-based group, one of the few national community-based groups, or the national that focuses on African Americans, are perfect partners for anyone, whether it be a bank or a financial services company or a local government or a state government or that wants to execute public policy with success and with energy. And that to me is what we have to understand. So I like to talk about our reentry program, Save Our Sons in St. Louis. We have got a great leader out there, Michael McMillan. It's a highly successful program with a low recidivism rate. But for every 20 people in the program, there's another 100 on a waiting list. And that's the point, right? It doesn't have enough scale, doesn't have enough investment, doesn't have enough money. It has money to do good, but not to reach enough people, because we have to look at the large numbers of people that need to be served. John, we're in a situation where the black home ownership rate has slipped down to almost the 40% range. That's lower than it was, about the same place it was when the Fair Housing Act was passed. When the Community Reinvestment Act was passed. So
1977.
we've lost, 10 points in the home ownership arena. And just count the wealth that has been sucked out, all of the equity that's been sucked out, all of the hope and the promise of your own home. So we have a reversal we have to do, and attacking racism and attacking policies which create racial exclusion is essential to doing this. It is complicated, and I'm hoping that in this moment of awakening, we work on police misconduct issues. We work on voting rights. That's central to the work we do. But the economic issues cannot take a back burner if we are truly going to make this a third future.
I'm feeling bad that I've loved this conversation so much. I've hogged at the time with Lisa. I'm going to turn it over to her. I will say.
Oh, Lisa. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Marc. How are you?
Hey, fantastic. For some reason, I can't see you. I can only hear you.
Understood. But listen, you sound fantastic. Let me thank you for your leadership. I want to echo John's sentiments about all the work that the Urban League, National Urban League, has always done, but under your leadership, it's been elevated and accelerated. So thank you for that. And listen, you're working on the demand side. You're building the pipeline. You're getting people ready. You're getting people skilled up and programs scaled up. Let me talk about public policy a second, because you talked about being an executor of public policy. And when I talk to CEOs across the country, frankly, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of intimidation about the African American community and communities of color at large. Are you having any conversations about public policy, about getting rid of these barriers to entry, be they real or be they perceived? Because I had one CEO say to me, well, I've seen all the McKinsey studies that saying having diverse workforces is actually enabling your company to perform better, but I just don't know where to find the people, and then when I find them, I can't relate to them. What do we say to those people who are creating public policy and who are working in the private sector, who intellectually understand this is the right thing to do to eliminate racism and raise all economic boats, but emotionally and psychologically, they're not there, Marc? What do we do?
Well, they almost have to jump into a pool of very cold water.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost a shock treatment. And one of the most important things for leaders is to know what you don't know.
Right.
And then know what you don't know, and then know what you need to know. So for one to say, I can't relate is one thing. To say, you know what, I got to learn to relate.
Right.
I have to learn to relate is another thing. And it means opening your circle. Sometimes I think corporate executives who are well-intended have such small social and relationship circles, right? It tends to be people that are so like themselves, right? They don't have a broad span. Those of us who've come up.
That might have been Charlie's challenge, by the way, Marc. That might have been.
That might have been his challenge.
Charlie's challenge is limited circle.
And John and Lisa, speaking, the three of us, I mean, in order to play the leadership roles we've had to have this relationship circle that is broad and wide.
Yeah.
I mean, very broad, very wide, multiracial, multi-generational, economic. I mean, we have to be comfortable in country clubs and suites if we have to. We have to be comfortable on the street and in the hood if we gotta. We got family members and friends.
What skill we call that, Marc, right? That's cultural.
What do they call that?
You know what? That's cultural competence. It's another skill that most people do not recognize, that we move from our community to majority communities and back again 2 and 3 and 4 times a day. So it is a real skill. When people talk about, are you an analytical thinker? Are you a strategic thinker? Are you culturally competent? Do you have the ability to move smoothly from point A to point B and back again and perform all at the same time? So the cultural competence
Lisa,
is an issue.
And that's what some of these corporate leaders may have it.
Yeah.
And I've met many who have it, and then I've met some who don't have it. And I think that they've got to understand that you've got to become comfortable. Your team has to become comfortable in a changing world, because right now there's some realities that are just so stark. I remember listening to Steve Reineman, who was the head of Pepsi in 2003, speak to ELC. First time I'd been to an ELC major event.
Yeah.
And he was looking forward. Steve said, we're in 2003. He said, by 2018, half the high school graduates in America will be of color, not white. And he was saying to his colleagues in the business community, we have to be preparing for that day. Right. That day is coming.
Right.
And all you need to do is just take the projections forward, and it shows you that half of the workers, half of the consumers, half of the voters are going to be of color in this country. So it is essential cultural competence. And it's always amazing to me to hear business leaders who lead global companies struggle with cultural competence, where on the global stage, they figure out how to understand Germany or Japan or China or other places where they do business. They find people who are bilingual. They understand the culture. So, this is not anything. It's. I hope that people have a wide enough mentality to understand that they've got to learn. Now, I've talked to many business leaders in the last 6 months, many CEOs in the last 6 months. And the ones I've spoken to, and of course, I know it's a narrow group, have indicated an enthusiasm and a willingness to try to meet the moment. The recognition that this moment is going to be defined by how institutions respond. And I think we're at the beginning of that process. And I've had some candid conversations with business leaders who said, well, what do I do and where do I find and what do I do? And I said, hey, I've said, you're looking for, quote unquote, mid-level executives. I said, hire an African-American headhunting firm.
That's right.
And go identify the talent that's out there. It's out there. I said, you want to change your entry-level pipeline? Audit the places where you recruit. Audit it. Look at whether you're recruiting at schools that do not have diverse student bodies, and whether you relied on a narrow pipeline to fill entry-level positions in your company. So you got to retool things. It's like a coach who takes over a football team or basketball team, and they're not performing, they're not winning, or they're looking up and they're saying, boy, all my competitors are going to have a whole lot of new players. And then you say, I've got to go get some new players. Number two, I've got to change my offensive and defensive schemes a little bit in order to meet the moment and meet the times. And that's what leaders have to do. They can't simply look. Leaders are expected now to lead in a multiple bottom line element. Yeah, you got to get the returns. Yeah, you got to pay attention to shareholders. But you have to pay attention to customers. You have to pay attention to employees. You have to pay attention to the community. You have to pay attention to the corporate standing, philanthropy, and reputation. So you have more to do than simply gaze, at a balance sheet every morning when you wake up, or gaze at an earnings statement on a quarterly basis and say, "Whoop, make my earnings target." I can basically go back to sleep.
I know. Marc, I don't want to cut you off, but you got all the way to sports. You know I'm a happy camper now that you brought in that international language.
So this conversation could go on forever. Unfortunately, we're going to wrap this one up. And Marc, I'd like to pick this back up with you later on a follow-up to the forum, because this is a really important, vital conversation. The thing you mentioned about the Urban League scaling policy, amongst other things, working with corporations, banks, et cetera, is extraordinarily important lesson. I don't think people knew that. I didn't know that. So that was one of many teachable moments. And we both know, as we conclude here, Marc, that Bill Daley is not shy. So it was a glitch this morning. We're going to come back and have another conversation with him, because he's got a lot of stuff to say, and we want to hear it. We want to hear it. The world needs to know about it. Thank you, Marc, for being with us today.
Hey, thank you very much, John and Lisa. And
Absolutely.
John, good luck with the forum. Good luck with the annual meeting.
God bless you.